Hello, everyone. As you are joining today, if you can type in the chat where you're zooming in from, we love to know who's joining us. And unless you're trying to speak, if you can go on mute, but feel free to type where you're zooming in from. If you want to share how old your kids are, we love to know who's with us. Our mentor panelists can type their name and where they're zooming in from too. But we love to know who's joining us, and we will get started momentarily. Hello, Kelly from Southern California. We were just talking about Southern California. Hello, Seattle, we're covering all the bases. Joy, Jules and I are in our office in San Francisco. Welcome, everyone. Okay, we're gonna get started because we've got a lot to cover. Thank you all so much for being here today. Today, we're gonna talk about how to make an impact as a high schooler. I am Audrey Wisch. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Curious Cardinals, and I'm honored to be here with three of our extraordinary mentors at Curious Cardinals. I'm just going to briefly introduce myself and Curious Cardinals, and then I'm going to introduce our amazing mentors, and we're going to have a bit of a Q&A, and then we're going to open it to anyone here who has any questions you want to ask. You can raise your hand or type those in the chat, and can't wait to learn from our amazing mentors. So a brief introduction, I started Curious Cardinals 6 years ago when I was a student at Stanford. I was a history major who thought I was pre-law with my 10-year life plan set and aspirations to be the next Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And then the pandemic hit and Stanford sent us home. I started tutoring kids online. Working with those kids, observed they weren't just struggling in school, they were disengaged and uninspired. They were absorbing and regurgitating what they read in a textbook, but didn't know why it mattered. So that inspired me to apply what they were learning in school to their interests, their passions, the world around them. One of them asked for math help. I was not as passionate about math, so I called Alec. Alec was an aerospace engineer at Stanford who loved math. And instead of drilling math equations, Alec showed them how math makes airplanes fly. And suddenly the student wasn't just learning math, he felt genuinely connected to it. And that's when we realized there was a real magic to our near-peer, passion-based, project-based learning model. It's 6 years later. We are a team of 14 in our office in San Francisco, and we have a platform of 1,000 plus college and grad student mentors working with thousands of students around the globe. And our goal is to help students find their purpose and the path to get there. We work with K through 12, but predominantly 7th to 12th. We also just launched a platform called the FlightPlan, which is a college platform that helps high schoolers navigate their journey and high school applications, in addition to our passion projects and passion-based mentorship with Curious Cardinals. So without further ado, we are going to introduce the stars who are here today, which are panelists. I'm going to let them introduce themselves. So Michael, please take it away.
Hi, everyone. My name is Michael. I grew up in Southern California, in Long Beach, California, and I moved up to the Central Coast and now live in a town called Salinas, California. Went to high school down there at a school called Wilson High School, and North Salinas High School was where I graduated. But then I went to Yale College, graduated from there with a degree in history and political science. And unlike Audrey, I still believe myself to be a pre-law student. But at the present time here at Curious Cardinals, I mentor students in academic writing, journalism, leadership, and public speaking, and really anything community passion project related. So I'm really excited to dive into these projects with you guys today. Oh yes, and here are collections of the things I did in high school. I was a big yapper all through my time in high school, so I just loved the microphones. I was always very close to them or holding them up for other folks. In these photos, I'm participating in a walkout for gun violence prevention. That's the top left photo there. At the bottom left there is my city's first Juneteenth celebration, and we're actually honoring that gentleman there who's been a lifelong educator in our county with a resolution. And then sort of some other high school activities, a voter registration drive at the bottom right, and my time at JSA in the bottom center, which is a pretty old photo. It's good to see it.
All right, hi. Nice to see everyone. My name is Madeline. I grew up in Portland, Oregon, and I went to St. Mary's Academy, which is an all-girls school there. And I graduated a couple years ago from Brown University with a degree in theater. I also studied English, and I just finished a Fulbright grant in Argentina where I was teaching English and doing theater. And at Curious Cardinals, I mentor students mainly in creative writing projects because I have a lot of experience in that as a playwright. Yeah. And okay, so yes, as you might have seen Michael at the microphone, you would see me on the stage in high school. So on the left is me in Les Mis, the musical. The summer before my senior year of high school, I got really obsessed with the book, and then I found out our school was doing the musical, and then I got to play Jean Valjean, which was really awesome. And then I also ended up writing a history paper about Victor Hugo, the author, which in the top right, I ended up winning an award. I also sang in a treble quartet with my friends, played a mythical stone in a different play, and I also I got into playwriting and directing and dramaturgy, which is another cool part of theater. And so the bottom one is a note that I wrote for a show that I worked on with a really close mentor of mine, which was really cool.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. My name is Micah. I am a rising junior at Yale University. Like Michael, I am currently studying history, and I'm also pursuing the certificate in intensive education studies. I think long term, I want to go into public education back home in North Carolina, which is where I'm from. I'm from a super, like, astronomically small town. It's called Walburg. It's near Wake Forest University, kind of, if anyone is familiar. Um, Last time I checked, we were like in the 3,000s, about 3,000 people. And I think that number just keeps going down every single time I check. But yeah, from North Carolina, go to Yale, study history. At Curious Cardinals, mostly work with high schoolers. My favorite thing to tutor is AP US history. I actually just had some of my students email me because they just got their scores back. And so that was the most awesome full circle experience. Yes, these photos. I was the biggest band nerd in high school. I loved marching band. I loved concert band. I played French horn. You can kind of see that in the bottom middle. Did it all 4 years. Did it in middle school too. I think marching band was probably my favorite though. It's where I found like my lifelong friends, lifelong mentors. My band director, who, if you look in the top right photo, it's the guy. Yeah, right there. He just retired, but my entire band class still keeps up with him, and we talk like weekly. Actually, it's his birthday today, um, and I think that's just a testament to like the small town like band community feel. That's what kind of made me stick with it.
Amazing. Well, thank you all so much for your thoughtful, vibrant introductions. We are here today to specifically talk about making impact as a high schooler. And so I would love to just hear from each of you. What impact did you make as a high schooler? When did you start being passionate about social justice? And where, maybe take us back to like rising ninth grade self. What did that look like? And how did that start? And how did it evolve over the course of your high school journey? Michael, if you want to go first.
Yeah, you got it. For me, my story actually starts, I think, a bit before the ninth grade. By the time I got to high school, it was pretty easy for me to try to plug into things that I felt were sort of advancing the ways I thought impact could be defined. So when I was a kid, my parents were really big on getting us involved with volunteering at our local food bank. And so every third Saturday of the month, my parents would, when we would usually sleep in on a Saturday, wake us up bright and early, 7 a.m., get us dressed and ready to go down to serve some of the folks from our church at the food pantry that we had set up there. So growing up in Southern California, I think homelessness is like the most visible and visceral form of poverty that we all see in our state. And so being able to see up close that issue and try to have an impact from such an early age, I think for me was sort of like a drug that I couldn't get over. And so by the time I got to high school, I was just looking for ways to continue to build on that impact. And so, in some of the photos that you saw, I got into doing things like voter registration drives. And so, yeah, I think that once you are able to identify what you are passionate about, which I realize is also something that requires some assistance sometimes. But once you find that spark, it's pretty easy to ask around and find ways to connect and build a resume without doing resume building. Yeah.
Yeah, Micah or Madeline, feel free to chime in next. Go for it, Micah.
Yeah, for sure. I would say that I was originally going to say something about music, but actually going back, something that I didn't talk about a little bit earlier is I was super into like state government and like honestly local politics in high school. And just like a quick Google search will tell you that like compared to like urban populations, rural populations, like the percentage of people who vote is so much lower. And so I remember like growing up and like being from a small town, and it's like all these people are so passionate about so many different things. Even my teachers, like so passionate about music education and like teacher pay and like improving K-12 public education in North Carolina and in the South. But from talking to these people, I learned that most of these people aren't voting and like they're not, taking what they care about so much and like, exercising their right and putting it into practice. And that ended up culminating in, it was really cool. I was having these thoughts as a ninth grader and going into high school, which was right during COVID. And then right before I graduated my senior year, I think it was like March, I was able to have like an inaugural like voter pre-registration drive for my high school, which was awesome. One of the most rural schools around. And it was really, really cool. Hopefully, just because you register doesn't mean you go and vote. Just because you pre-register doesn't mean that you'll go on to be registered. But that was almost, it was such a full circle experience to see like these concerns that I had. And looping it back to like making a change there in my community.
Yeah, definitely echoing what these two said about, finding that spark or that passion and following it. And then also really, following through on connecting with people that you admire and respect. I think when I was in 8th grade, I saw so basically Oregon Children's Theater is this organization in Portland, Oregon that has this amazing company for like teenage actors. That's like a professional level training company, and they do these really like awesome intense shows. I remember in 8th grade I saw a show that they did about the Columbine shooting, and it was in this tiny theater, and I was like, oh my god, I can like, these teenagers are so close and they're doing such insane work and bringing kind of this really nuanced human dimension to this really difficult issue that is very viscerally present in a lot of people's lives in middle school and high school. And I was just like, that is the coolest thing ever, and I want to do that. So I focused on trying to get into that program. And then I'd always had an interest in theater, and I also really loved writing. And also so 9th grade, I was like, how can I, like, is there a way to combine this? And I saw that Oregon Children's Theater had playwriting classes, and so I took a playwriting class, and I totally fell in love with it, and also met a really impactful mentor who like really understood my work, really believed in me, and really helped foster my creativity. And I continued working with him throughout high school. And like I worked on a show that he was directing it, and then I was like his assistant director, helped him with the script. And then that relationship actually continued after college. I actually went back and I wrote a show for the company to do that was actually also about a school shooting. Definitely a topic to think a lot about and humanize, or that I think it's important to really look at the human dimension of. So yeah, I think I think the impact that I really focused on was that kind of like with issues like this, it's so easy to think about them on this really grand political level, which is a super important dimension. But I think that starts from the heart, and like the kind of visceral, immediate human experience. And so that ended up being, I think, a really meaningful path to take, of really focusing on writing and performance and all of that.
Michael, I'd love to come back to what you said, where it actually started earlier than high school. It started with your parents signing you up to volunteer. I had the same experience as early as I can remember. My parents signed me up to volunteer, and that just became part of who I was, and something that I felt so fortunate to never worry about having food on my table and so many other things that I perhaps would have otherwise taken for granted. And that just became part of why I wanted to be the next Ruth Bader Ginsburg. At what point, if you reflect back on that, and then would love to hear as well from Madeline and Micah if it resonates, at what point did that go from your parent's choice, your parent putting you in a situation, exposing you to something, to your own agency? And what might that look like over time for a parent who's in the situation of signing their kid up, but hasn't yet seen their kid cultivate the desire themselves?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I don't think that there's a clear and obvious sort of line where it instantly becomes one's own choice, because those parents are setting those foundations, I think, for a culture that develops the student who then eventually, the external voice of the parent becomes the internal voice of the conscience. So I guess for me, probably somewhere around middle school was whenabouts it started to become my choice, when I started to become interested in sort of politics and civic action. I can't help but notice that Micah and Madeline here, we don't know each other outside of this sort of organization, but like have the similar experience of like organizing voter registration drives and being interested, or at least hearing a lot about gun violence, especially at the time that we were sort of in high school. And so just sort of having that culture of wanting to make an impact, and seeing the issues, I think, around me, it was very easy to sort of pick something out, one issue at a time, and say, I want to affect change in this area. And as I say, I used the reference of drugs earlier. I think a better metaphor might be a sort of a viral infection, right? Getting bit by the organizing bug. For me, it was something that I, was afflicted by, and sought to sort of spread with other people. And in time, through middle school and then eventually in high school, where sort of the expectation is you're building a resume for college, it started to, I think, operate like a flywheel. My impact started to multiply and grow in ways that I didn't expect.
Micah and Madeline, I'd love to hear from you both. What type of influence did your parents have in shaping the type of person who started writing their own plays one day, started organizing their own voter registration, and then again, that it's never a perfect divide, but when you felt that splitting off, or really feeling your own ownership in the experiences that you were making impact through?
Yeah, I can go really quick. Not to put myself in my mom's shoes, but I'm going to. So with our church, my mom was kind of like the manager, like the lead, the point person of, it was called the backpack program. So we partnered with a local school, and kids who like would go hungry throughout the weekend because they didn't have like free and reduced lunch or whatever, during the school day. Basically every weekend we would like pack them. We would drop it, literally go into the school and like drop like a really like large bag of food into their backpack. And it was a great mission. And like now that I'm 20 years old and look back, it's like that was awesome. And that's like such tangible impact. But as a 7-year-old, or I think I was in middle school actually, I was not having it. I was like, this is not interesting. Like, and I'm sure my mom was like what in the world? Like, this is like the most impactful thing you could want. And so, I mean, if I had to guess, my mom was probably like, oh, this kid just doesn't care about others. Like, he doesn't care about volunteering, doesn't care about community service. But then, as a testament to just like trying new things and like something will eventually stick, got to middle school, realized that I adored music. I loved music education. For the longest time, I wanted to be a middle school band director, and realized that the type of mentorship, and the type of impact that I enjoyed creating was, I think when I was a 7th grader. So I had literally only been playing the French horn for a year, was beginning to like give like free private lessons, to the 6th graders. And then when I was an 8th grader, even to the 7th graders and the 6th graders. So I think that's just a testament to, if the first type of advocacy or work or, community involvement or impact doesn't stick, just keep trying. That's what my parents did, and it worked out. And I think it'll be so obvious. Like, if you're a student, it'll be obvious what you love. If you're a parent, it'll be so obvious, what your kid's calling is.
Yeah, I agree with that last part. I think my parents just had an overall mindset of like encouraging me to like noticing maybe my inclinations or my talents or like what I got excited about, and then encouraging me to follow that. So like they noticed that I really loved music. I love singing. They're like, why don't you play violin. And then I was playing violin for a while and I was like, I hate it. I can't anymore. So I was like, I just want to sing now. So like, okay, how about choir? And so then I got really into choir in high school. Same with theater. Like I loved performing. They're like, okay, there's some classes here, try this. And then I ended up really loving that. They're like, awesome, like keep going with that. And I think they just overall encouraged me to always do my best. Like I really appreciate that my parents, they never put like a kind of scary pressure on it. They were never like, you have to succeed at this or else. They were like, we know you can succeed, like you're amazing. You like owe it to yourself to kind of follow like what you're passionate about and what you're talented in. And so that also empowered me to just on my own look at trying different things. So like I also was doing volunteering in like homeless shelters, and in high school I also like ran this like conference about social justice. And then in college that ended up, I worked on like some political campaigns, and like, all of that was really cool experience that also feeds into kind of like my main passion, which I was, writing and performing and all of that. But I'm just really grateful for my parents for kind of cultivating that overall mindset in me.
Amazing. And obviously you're all incredibly impressive and ended up at amazing universities, Brown, Yale, Harvard. Never heard of them. I'm kidding. And Michael, you mentioned it. You mentioned the like, how do you do these things and cultivate these experiences without getting into the resume padding or resume building for the sake of it? How did you all navigate ambitions with elite university admissions and staying true and authentic to what you love? At what point did that feel like a tension, if ever? And how did you reconcile with that while staying true to what you love and navigating this very anxiety-inducing, tricky process?
Yeah, it's definitely tough. I think that it certainly is a tension, and the way I think I resolved it was by looking back. It may have very well been a lie, and I may have been spreading this misinformation, but telling myself that admissions offices really can tell the difference between someone who has padded up their resume just because they hope to get in the eyes, get before the eyes of an admissions reader, and someone who is genuinely interested in the things that they have put down on their resume, and they can tell by way of the letters of recommendation and the essays that you write, whether or not these experiences are authentic to yourself. I saw in high school a lot of folks who were very anxiously trying to make a positive impact. You can imagine someone who's, carrying a bunch of coffee and, has got very little sleep thinking about, changing the world. And that's because they were really doing it because they sought to get to a particular college or university. And, that's fine. There are a lot of people who succeed doing that, right? Trying to get ahead by investing in their own self-interest. But I really loved what Madeline said about sort of flipping that on its head and giving yourself that abundance mindset of like, you owe it to yourself actually, to do and be the best version of yourself you can be. So, yeah, I think sort of telling oneself that authenticity is a real premium that folks are looking for, and trying to be authentic and share that authenticity with others. That's how I try to resolve that. Folks might have different thoughts on that, though. Other folks might just say, fully invest in the ambition. That might be enough.
Yeah, I mean, I think like I said, the idea of like you owe it to yourself. Like I think I think I was very ambitious and I really felt like I want to work as hard as I can. I wasn't really focused on like I have to go to an Ivy League or else. I was mostly looking at like small liberal arts colleges, and I was like, okay, like I don't know, Brown, let's see about it. And I wasn't expecting to get in at all, but I think I just think my ambition always had more of like an internal source where I was just like, I'm so interested in this stuff, like I should just like pursue it to the fullest extent.
And
Madeline,
so that is amazing and beautiful and what we want for every kid. But for the kid who that's not the case, or the kid who is just doing the thing for college, what would you tell them? I don't know if you had peers who come to mind or how you were able, maybe you were so authentic because you had parents who were championing that, but how would you, I think everyone wants their kid to be like Madeline. So what would you tell for the folks who maybe are struggling with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would just say like keep like following that spark of like passion, like really like try to pay attention to that and just try to pay attention to that internal thing. And then like we've been talking about, like trying different things and like really like making an effort to just try different things and make, you know, concrete goals, which is this is something we work on in Curious Cardinals a lot, of like making really specific goals, so that it's not just like get into a good high school, just like have a better resume. It's like, oh no, I want to start this club based on this interest I have. Maybe I think other people are interested in that, and maybe it'll be fun to like, you know, figure out how to get people to come and like come up with things to talk about during the club sessions. And you know, then trying that and then maybe thinking, okay, this isn't as fun as I thought. Like what can I, like how can I make this more interesting? And then, you know, after you feel like you've given it a good effort, then maybe evaluating, okay, that maybe that's not something that I'm actually that interested in, and like moving on to the next thing. But I think just keeping up that mindset of like looking for what excites you the most, and then trying and creating, you know, as concrete of a goal as possible to actually to explore that and figure out if it's something for you.
Full stop, like to all of that. Like ditto, that's great. I'll keep it short because I feel like they covered it all. Two things that do come to mind though. Um, I think that's exactly why, like I think Michael was saying, like admissions officers can 100% see through like the fake resume padding. Like that's why there's an interview, right? For a lot of admissions. You know, you talk to an alumni, they're so interested in getting to know someone that might be going to their school. And so they can tell what's genuine and what's not. I think something that I always try to default back to is just like realizing to be in the place to like reach, just even to reach for these opportunities, to like have the space to think of ways to make an impact is such a privilege. And there are so many people, you know, all throughout the world that don't have that opportunity. And so I think when you really like zoom out and get the full, you know, picture, and get the larger lens, it's really, it makes it so much harder to just focus on the resume. And it really puts into perspective the work that you're doing.
Totally. And for you all, something that we firmly believe at Curious Cardinals is we want students to be agents of the change they want to see in the world. And we see a lot of students able and eager to take that initiative, and some students feel like, if I can't cure cancer, solve climate change, what impact can I even make? How would you think about magnitude and scope of impact, and helping students realize what they're capable of, especially when it comes to through community service or social impact work in their community?
This is something I was so worried about in my mind, you know, really early in high school, but especially as I got closer to college applications. I was like, I'm this kid from the middle of nowhere. Like, there's one stoplight in my town. How in the world am I going to be able to have as much impact as someone in a place like New York City, or like in a place where there's so many more resources? Um, and so, I mean, I think it's just all about like if you make one person's life, to be cliche, if you make one person's life better, it was worth it, you know? And any small bit of good that you can do is better than if you hadn't done it at all. And I know that sounds like cliche and it's like, oh, like, no, that's not really what you thought. No, like it truly is. I remember I was leaving my middle school one day. I had stayed after school for about hour, maybe 90 minutes, hour and a half to basically give like kind of like a private lesson, tutor a sixth grader on French horn. She had just started, and it just wasn't going great. Not quite. She didn't have quite the musical ear. And I remember like leaving and just being so like down in the dumps. Like, am I the problem? Like, am I like, was there any point in me staying? Could I have just gone home and taken a nap? Um, but I remember like my mom saying like, well, think about like what the improvements were. And I was like, yeah, sure, there were some improvements. You know, maybe it's learning a new note or a new scale. And she was like, well, that's enough. Like that's one more note or more new scale than what had been an hour and a half before. So I mean, it's very, very much like, you know, I said last time, you know, get the larger picture. I think you also have to zoom in sometimes too. And like the small wins are wins.
After you, Madeline.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'll echo that, and I'll also say sometimes the small wins actually are a lot more impactful than you think. Like I remember in high school, I was like a camp counselor in this theater camp at my high school, and I had this like, I think yeah, she was a seventh grader and or a sixth grader, and she had this like whole emotional breakdown on the first day because like the camp was not what which was she thought it was gonna be, and she was like in the bathroom, and I was like sent to kind of go like help her and just be like it's gonna be okay. And and then she was fine, and the camp went great. I kind of forgot about that because I just think like that's you know that was just one little moment in her life. But then later I was actually visiting my high school, and like this girl in the hall came up to me and was like, I go to the high school now, and like I remember that you like helped me feel better on that first day of camp, and it like really meant so much to me, and like it made me like want to come to the school. And so I remember just being like so surprised and happy that she remembered that, and that like really meant something to her, that I had really like kind of tried to like bring her back into the fold and like make her feel better. Because yeah, sometimes at that age you just have crazy emotions, and it can really like make a big difference, just to one individual person, when one person takes the time and has the patience to help you out in that state. So yeah, just echoing, I think, especially in theater and creative writing, the idea of like really being able to profoundly connect with one reader or like one audience member, I think it is really powerful, and I think has always drawn me in about art. And yeah, I think brought more broadly in life, like that ability to have a really deep impact on one person or a few people, is totally worth it, and I think is maybe the most profound impact that like one individual human might be able to make. So yeah.
I just love how aligned we are on this question. It's all about localizing your impact. There's so much out there. I think about, at least when I got to college, Micah, maybe you heard about this group when you got to Yale as well. Effective altruism, and they're all about maximizing your impact, making sure that every step you take in your desire to be, altruistic is effective, and you're doing the most impact that you can. This is the exact opposite of what I think got me to Yale, which was just this idea that Micah described of just try to have an impact on one person's life, try to make one person's life a little bit better. Um, and that really does make that difference. So yeah, ditto to what everyone was saying. The individual impact is so important. And I also want to emphasize this idea that those of us in a position to ask questions of what sort of impact we want to make, we are sort of privileged. And there's lots of sociological research that shows that when we try to localize our impact, that actually changes perspectives, into the long run, for students and young people, and does a lot, I think, in helping to cultivate civic-minded citizens, right? So just look around you. There's a lot that needs to be done. Try to make an impact at anything around you.
Love it so much. I'm going to ask a few more specific questions. So for this round, not everyone has to answer, and we'll get it through a bit more. And then parents, I already see a few DMs, and one person wrote in the chat. You can start thinking about the questions you want to ask, which we'll open it up to in about 5 minutes. So moving to the specific question. So a lot of students come to us and think, I need to start a nonprofit. I need to reinvent the wheel. Often there are other organizations, other local people doing the actual thing they want to do. Can one of you, if that resonates, tell me specifically what it's looked like as you as a high schooler to get involved in an existing org, and maybe beyond your own experience or what you've seen of your peers, what that actually tangibly looks like for the high schooler thinking they have to start a nonprofit?
I'm going to dive in. I might be the wrong person to answer this because I did actually work to start a nonprofit in high school. But
Tell us why.
well, I mean, because I was so interested in making an impact. We've talked so much about my personal passion for helping to combat poverty and things. So we actually did. Actually, in some ways, this does answer the question, because it wasn't like I woke up one day and decided to found something. I got in touch with a teacher who was sort of working to build the administrative infrastructure behind this effort. It was called More for Students, and basically we raised a bunch of money to get students at our school who were experiencing poverty snacks. And so the idea was to make sure that they were never outside of 400 feet of, at first it was snacks, and then we expanded to hygiene products, and then we started giving bus passes and tickets to prom and homecoming, and it was just a real outpouring of community support, ended up growing it. But it was just the willingness, I think, to get connected to something else. There was an after school meeting. It was a Spanish professor who sort of, pulled me aside. I was like the first year class president at the time, and I was just generally interested, as I said, about poverty. And he said there's a meeting after school if you don't mind hanging out, talking to some of us teachers and administrators, and I did, and I was just so moved to see these folks who, after their working hours, were staying to try to solve big issues. And so I dedicated myself to working to develop the student side of that. But yeah, I think just a willingness to, kind of like what we've said throughout the call, a willingness to try new things, a willingness to just go out there and try to make an impact in ways you didn't otherwise, or you didn't first realize you could. I think on the other side of my interests are journalism and writing. And I only got into that by mistake. There was an open slot on my schedule in high school, and I never liked having an empty spot on my schedule in high school. So I decided to fill it with an elective, and it was journalism. I had never done journalism before, but I learned the skill, and I obviously just became so passionate about it. I actually just finished up my term as an editor at the Yale Daily News. I forgot to mention that at the top, but it was on the slide. But that is how far I think just like feeding a spark, which, by the way, I don't believe that people have an individual purpose. We have lots of sparks, right? Develop those things and see where they go.
I love that. And my next question is, some of you have already talked about this. We are a generation that has gone through a pandemic, school shootings, climate change, so many things. And the hopeful silver lining of that, again, is empowering young people to realize the change they can be agents of making in the world. I would love to hear one of you speak to this. What is an instance of you seeing problems in your real life and your upbringing and taking action? Were there any mental hurdles? Were adults supportive? What did that look like? And what advice would you have for young people, speaking from your own journey, to go after that thing and take action on the things that are keeping you up at night or weighing you?
Yeah, sure. It's less a global issue. Like it's definitely not as well. Maybe it is not as, when you think of it, it's not as large as like climate change or mass violence or stuff like that. But something that I cared a lot about in high school was teacher pay. So in America, teacher pay isn't great. In North Carolina, I think we're ranked 48 or 49th out of 50. And early on in high school, I was very, very lucky to be able to get very close to a lot of my teachers. And we were having conversations just about life and their lives, past, this is the quadratic formula and, all of that. And I noticed that all of these teachers who were my greatest mentors, who I cared so, so much about, in separate conversations, they weren't bouncing off of each other, were all mentioning financial hardship and financial struggles. And then so that kind of like pushed me to like, okay, like there must be a reason for this. Like why? And so I was, doing kind of my own research on teacher pay in North Carolina, the K-12 education system. All this to say, I think that you can have so much impact and so much change just by like having conversations. So I didn't start a nonprofit that like advocated in Raleigh at the state capitol for teacher pay. I didn't like create like a website that was like, promoting information and making it super digestible and accessible. What I did do was like talk to my peers and like have really meaningful conversations to the point where like I feel like I graduated with about 180 people. I think all of them probably knew how bad teacher pay was in North Carolina because of how prevalent these conversations, were in our school. And so, that's something that, I didn't do anything like crazy nonprofit, what you typically think to get into college. I didn't do any of that in high school, but it's something that I've carried on in college. So I think a lot of these things, I guess the 2 points I'm trying to make, one, conversations are so important. And like the words and what you say can go on to inspire others to even just care a little bit more. And that is so much impact. But then two, like don't think that even if you want to start a nonprofit, it has to peak your senior or junior year of high school. Like life is long. You have so much time left. And, college is a time when, regardless of what institution you go to, you're going to have so many resources. And so these, massive global issues that you care about, maybe it's climate change, maybe it's teacher pay in a county in your state. You can continue that past high school. And I think that is also when you're looking at thinking, okay, do I want to start a nonprofit? Think, is this something I would want to continue past my college acceptance? And if the answer is yes, then you should totally follow it.
I noticed that, Micah, you are class president. I don't know, Michael, if you were class president at Yale or beforehand. Where were you always natural leaders? Where did you cultivate your leadership skills?
Yeah. So I may or may not have mentioned my dad or my whole family is very blue collar. So Yale was kind of like out of left field. It was like not the typical path that a lot of my family, a lot of guys in my family specifically had followed. Um, and so like when I tell people this, like people kind of always laugh. I'm like, no, it's serious. I totally get like this drive to make change from my dad, who is an automobile mechanic. And he also like has his electrician's license and did plumbing for a little bit and HVAC license. One of I think probably the most hardworking person I know. Um, and so, yeah, I don't know if there's like a bottom line or a lesson to what I'm trying to say, but I totally think that, even though me and my dad like have such different lived experiences and interests and strengths, if you ask me to change a flat, I'm going to be honest, I don't know if I could do it. But my dad totally could. And I draw so much inspiration from him. And I think, I mean, maybe a lesson to a lot of parents, like even if you, like if your kid is not like you at all or different interests, I know that's totally how my dad felt when I was little. I think he wanted me to be like the baseball superstar, and we tried that and it didn't work. Um, but I think it's just a lesson like you can like you're always an inspiration to your kid if like you work hard and like show them that no matter what, like you're going to make an impact somehow in whatever facet of life you find yourself in.
Yeah, I think nature versus nurture. That's one of those unknowable things. I wouldn't consider myself to be a natural leader. I think kind of like what Micah was saying, you kind of find a reason to be a leader. You find someone who inspires you, and you kind of allow them. You allow yourself to emulate them. My dad also very hard worker, someone who inspires me to push forward and drive ahead. But at the same time, I'm a Leo, and a lot of my friends say that that makes me a natural yapper. So who knows? Maybe it's a bit of both. But I think take whatever sort of natural skills that you have, channel it towards something that you personally, only you have the agency to. I think identify what makes you passionate, align those things, and leadership comes from that, I think.
I'm going to ask like 2 more rapid fire questions, and then parents, feel free to write in the chat, raise your hand, or DM me for your questions. Rapid fire. Michael, I believe you astutely said college admissions officers can read when your impact is inauthentic. I would love to hear from each of you. What did you write your Common App essay on? I think there's a lot of people who think you have to have a braggadocious, all the accolades, and at our last panel, Nala, who went to Harvard, wrote about making bread. So what did you guys each write your Common App essay on? Madeline, if you want to start first.
Yeah, I think I wrote my Common App essay on like writing and playwriting and like through the I think it was oh my God, it was so long ago. It was through the lens of like some relationship that I actually went through in high school about like not knowing what to say, and it was like the power of words. Yeah, I think.
You got it. Okay. I'll hop in. I think that's a beautiful one, Madeline, by the way. I wrote about the fact that both of my parents and most of the people in my family are more STEM oriented. A lot of them are in medicine. Both my parents are nurses. Most of my siblings want to become nurses themselves. But I, being the oddball of the group, I was interested in history and politics. So I wrote in my essay about sort of like the formative experience of having my parents come home every day and tell me about the things happening at the hospital or at their job and things. And while I didn't have the inclination toward the sciences, I really don't like math as well. but sort of wanting to make an impact by healing others, healing communities, kind of like my parents did. That's what I wrote my essay about, and I guess some admissions officer liked it. So
I told everyone I was a band nerd, and this is just gonna like validate that intensely. I wrote about music, and I wrote about like making it and like listening to it, and then also I was drum major with the marching band, so like kind of influencing it. I had no shame, so like I name dropped Taylor Swift, I name dropped Noah Khan, shamelessly two of my favorite artists. I also like during my senior year when I was drum major, if you like ever saw me even on the highway driving from place to place, I would be listening to like our marching band show, and there would be one hand on the wheel and one hand conducting. I'm sure like some cop somewhere was like, "What in the world is happening?" And then I also like I used to when I would practice my French horn, I literally would go practice in our hall bathroom because the acoustics made me sound better. So I was like talking about all these like quirks. So when you're running your Common App, put it all out there. Like they don't care. They want to get to know you.
I love it. One more question, and then I have some parents DMing. We have so many thoughtful parents here tonight. What advice, if you could go back and give any advice to your high school self, parents, what advice would you give to the parents here today? Madeline, if you want to start us off.
I would say, yeah, your daughter, like, she's gonna figure it out. She'll be fine. Maybe she's really stressed out right now, but like, she'll she'll be okay. Like, trust her. And yeah, keep encouraging her to do, yeah, to follow her passions. Kind of follow through on any talents she has, and everything will work out for the best.
I would say my mom wanted me to stay in North Carolina. She didn't want to let go like at all. And I think part of it is coming with like being the oldest child. So for any of the parents that are like hesitant about, wanting to keep their kids close or in state, I know it can be so tough. My mom would tell you that. But my mom has also said like when you just like let the bird fly, like let it go, it's like so much more rewarding, and it totally overcomes any homesickness or toughness that you have to go through. So just let your kids fly, and they'll end up exactly where they need to be.
yeah, I think I was trying to come up with like a helpful zoo metaphor, but I this idea of tiger parenting, I think, does help ambitious kids get ahead. But I find that it's not always the most sustainable strategy. And kind of to Micah's point, when the kids do kind of go away from home, whether or not they are able to sustain that energy when the helicopter parent isn't around is a serious question. Um, I would just say, obviously you all are on this call because your kids are ambitious or you've got some ambitions for your kids. Try to make it as natural as possible. Try to make it for the students, kind of to Madeline's point earlier, make it so that they feel it's a personal mission for them. It is an act of self-fulfillment and not something that they are not some checklist that they are having to check off in order to get your approval or get to some desired endpoint. If you're able to do that, as I think my parents have done successfully for me, Mike is for him, and Madeline's for hers, your kids will go pretty far and they'll have a lot of fun too.
Love that. Have a lot of fun too is really important. Okay, the first parent question, did you enter college knowing your passion, or did a specific class or experience completely change your direction?
I can kick it off. I came in, one of the few extracurriculars my high school offered was Model United Nations. I'm sure many of you are familiar with it. It's great. I still do it at Yale. I thought I was going to be a global affairs major. I started studying Arabic. I was super interested in the Middle East. Realized about a year in that wasn't for me, and that scared me because like my 10-year plan, quote unquote, was broken because like, oh my gosh, I don't love what I'm doing. And I took this past year, my sophomore year, completely took 5 million steps back. A lot of time sitting down, reevaluating, sitting and thinking, trying new classes. I feel like everyone told me coming into school, like, oh, take a random class. And I was like, I know what I want to do. Not true. Even if you think you do, like, take the random class, because for me, the random class on New York City for public high schools in New York City is what fully made me realize I wanted to go into education policy. And my life, I think, is on a completely different trajectory and a much more fulfilling trajectory. Totally changes. I think I changed my mind probably 10 times.
Yeah, I think that I was actually just going over this quote with my sister the other day because we just thought it was so funny. But Mike Tyson once said, "Everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face." Um, and so I think that college is one of those experiences where you can come in thinking, "I've got this plan. I know what it is that I want to do," and then just like life happens, and you find yourself changing majors 10 or a dozen times and changing classes when you didn't expect to do that. So to answer the question directly, I certainly believed myself to have known what my passion was. And I think that sort of believing that has allowed me to put myself in certain spaces and situations where I could then grow in ways that I didn't expect. So this idea of being open to new experiences is not something you just like do in high school in order to get into the college and suddenly shut off. It's like a lifelong disposition, it seems to me.
So another parent wrote and asked, how do you help students make impact through the projects? What does your role as a mentor look like? And what's the difference with if they tried to do it on their own?
I think if I could just answer the last question first, I think that the difference would be that they've got someone to check in with every week, bounce ideas off of, see you know what's going well, ask questions and things like this. Because oftentimes, and I know that I certainly would have found value, I think, in a service like Curious Cardinal when I was in high school. The replacement for it for me was literally just like talking to psychology teachers and other folks who I considered to be experts in the things that I wanted to get started off get off the ground. Um, and so, yeah, I think that that is the main difference. It's like feeling like you have like a real mentor and support and ally in this like big project, which again, um, big ideas don't always translate into big actions because I think that there can be some real hesitation to actually turn ideation to action. But having a mentor really helps make that process a lot smoother. Reason being, and I think that we've tried to achieve that in this call, it's by showing them how to lower the sort of stakes, how to turn things into steps that they can then look back on and see a whole project has been made. Yeah.
You nailed it. Wonderful example of what a Curious Cardinals mentor delivers. Someone else asked me, what's an example of a project you help a student work on?
I don't want to talk too much. I want to give folks a chance to share, their projects as well. But for me, I mentioned at the top, I help with academic writing. So I've had a couple students who have tried to enter academic writing competitions. So doing like research papers, writing like sort of critical essays and things. And I've sort of helped with that. It was kind of funny when I got the prompt. One of my students, who's like an eighth grader, was interested in doing a research project, and I mentioned during my introductory call the fact that I had done a thesis, and he was sort of like, "Well, I really want to make it like a college level paper," and I was like, "Yeah, let's help you do that." Of course, it wasn't as detailed as the year-long paper that I ended up putting together, but I do think that it ended up being a better project than the other end of it because we channeled that ambition and turned it into something that he could actually create himself.
I love that. Madeline, you go first.
Yeah, I'm working with a student right now on he's creating a short film, and he's also trying to enter writing into like the Scholastic Writing Awards, which is something I did as a high schooler. It's a great writing competition. And yeah, it's been really cool also helping him figure out like his film taste. Like I've, assigned him some films to watch, and like we've analyzed them together, and it's really cool seeing him like that's a moment where like I as a mentor, I noticed like, oh, this really like gets him going, like that, like talking about the film, talking about the visual details, how is the director telling us about the characters, and using shots to frame and tell the story. I noticed he really like that I noticed that spark that we were talking about in him, and so that's been really cool. And he just shared the first draft of his script, and we went through it, and I gave him a bunch of exercises to do, and to keep revising it. And yeah, I think it's gonna be really cool.
That's awesome. Another parent asked, how did you prepare yourself for high school, undergrad during middle school? This is me asking as a parent of a middle schooler. Is it too early to start prepping for undergrad and encourage support middle schoolers to think about what path they want to choose?
Something that I noticed in my middle school was, for context, I wanted to be a marine biologist. And now my friends will tell you I'm probably the worst person ever at math and science. So things change. But something that I noticed in my middle school is a lot of the kids that were very involved, they wanted to be very proactive. They wanted to like just make the most of even their middle school experience. You know, I was doing robotics and Battle of the Books and all the band stuff. Um, Even if I didn't like feel super strongly about it, it just puts you in this community of students that are very ambitious and very high achieving. And not doesn't have to be in a toxic way whatsoever. It's truly just kids that love to learn and love to make a difference and challenge themselves intellectually. Um, I think that honestly, that would be like my biggest advice is like, especially if you're in like a middle school to high school situation where the same kids that are in your middle school class will move on together to the same high school or majority to the same high school. Making those friendships and like making those connections, those kids who are really just like wanting to learn so much, sixth, seventh, eighth grade, are probably going to be the kids that want to continue learning so much and challenge themselves intellectually as they go through ninth, 10th, 11th, 12th grade and even past that. So I would say just middle school, like it's your trial period. Try everything, and meet the people along the way. And rest assured, if you're a parent, that your kid, if they're doing those things, will be around the best people that they could be in that environment.
Couldn't agree more. I think you nailed it. Michael, were you gonna add something?
Yeah, I was just going to say that like it seems to me that it's never too early. Like um, the grind for admissions to colleges just seems to get earlier and earlier every year. And I think that there are plenty of students who come from families with the resources to put them on a conveyor belt to get to college. But if you start as early as middle school to inculcate in them the personal desire and the personal drive and ambition to make an impact and to make it authentic, as I say before, that is a much more sustainable strategy, and they will go further than if they are just pulled along, as I honestly have seen in my own experience.
You guys couldn't have said it better yourselves. That is what we like to say. Start early, and it's not about college. It's about cultivating an authentically passionate, curious kid. No fancy, exorbitantly priced college counselors to pay for when you do that work. That's the natural, organic way to birth a curious kid. So how do we support kids at Curious Cardinals? At Curious Cardinals, mentors help with two main things: academic mentorships and passion projects. Academic mentorship is like conventional tutoring, but we say tutoring is the T word because it has a connotation of being transactional, a remedy for Friday's test. This is so much more than that. This is not just learning to nail Friday's test. This is learning for life, and learning from a mentor who you look up to and see yourself in. Passion projects are for students who, whether you come in knowing you want to conduct scientific research or you come in with a love for theater and writing, but you have no idea what to do with it, we help you hone your interests and turn them into tangible project deliverables. As Michael said so eloquently, mentors provide the accountability, the guidance, and the support so that you can be your best self and show up every week, continuing to progress. So that's what our mentors do at Curious Cardinals. Our mentors, as you saw from the three amazing people today, are presidents of clubs, winners of award. They are the best and brightest, most talented and inspiring young people. And while their resumes are incredibly impressive, what's more impressive is their hearts of gold, as you probably saw hearing from our panelists today. And while we've worked with 15,000 students through our near-peer mentorship model, we just launched something new called the FlightPlan. So many families ask for help with college. As you could probably hear from today's panel, we are not about cultivating or manufacturing a kid for college. That is not what we believe in, but we've heard the same complaints and questions and concerns about how to navigate college admissions for the past 6 years. So we built something that helps students understand where they are, help them find opportunities, programs, competitions, internships, awards, helps hold them accountable, helps them tell their narrative, and students can do this with the mentor's guidance. This by no means replaces the necessary important human figures in their life, But it's the data-driven objective accountability layer that we believe helps students navigate the college-facing questions that we've been hearing for the past 6 years. So we open the flight plan again in August if anyone's interested. You can, Jules will share in the chat the link to join the waitlist. A lot of students work with a mentor and the flight plan. And that's it for today. I know we are at time. Someone just asked, is it too late for Rising Junior to start a project? We will answer a few final questions because I got a few final DMs, but otherwise, if other people have to go, thank you so much for being here today and for your time and thoughtfulness. And as I like to say, while your kid might not thank you today, they will thank you one day for your diligence and thoughtfulness in helping them navigate their journey. So thank you. And special thank you to our mentors. Ihuma asks, is it too late for a Rising Junior to start a project? As a Rising Junior, absolutely not. I, again, would be measured in your expectations that you have 1 year before college applications. So if you want to get your research published or start something that has massive impact, things take time. But if your student is willing to put in the work week over week, they can do something extraordinary. And I would say this is also not only a pivotal year for college applications, it's a pivotal year for them to figure out themselves what they want to do, what they want to actually study, where they'd want to apply. And so a project for a Rising Junior can be the perfect avenue to figure that out. So I would say absolutely, but what's really important, especially junior year, which is rigorous and standardized testing too, is really make sure they commit weekly and take the time to do something that's actually meaningful. And someone else asked me how does this differ for a rising freshman or sophomore? And I can have the mentors, if they have thoughts, to answer as well. But I would say they're at different stages of the journey. Freshman year is a clean slate. They get to figure out what they want to do and get to explore. And what we like to say is it's kind of like a funnel. Freshman year, figure it out, say yes, try things. And each year, hopefully you're narrowing down and going a little bit more deeper into the things you love most without spreading yourself too thin. That's some of what the flight plan helps with. 10th grade is hopefully we have an interest or something that you actually like and want to cultivate further that we're running with. And freshman year is often throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks. Both are really pivotal years. And I would say we love working with students. Those grades are earlier because they have the time and space to do these things and figure them out with college not always in their head. Whereas, as I said, with the parent who asked about Rising Juniors, you can do that, but you just need to make sure you put in the time. And hopefully they're not too caught up with the pressure of college inhibiting them. Any thoughts on independent research? I heard a lot of kids are doing it and concerned it's becoming cliched. So a lot of students like doing research, and this is a really great way to dive deep into a topic and show intellectual depth and expertise in a topic. I would say what I'm always wary of is the pay-to-play programs versus a kid actually learning the process, which means that if a kid's learning how to do research, they very much might not get it published. Or a perfect example I think of is we have a student who started his journey of writing research in 9th grade when he tore his ACL and he was a passionate soccer player. And he didn't get it published till junior year. He worked with a pre-med mentor at Stanford on ACL injuries and soccer athletes. They spent a lot of time doing preliminary research on the topic. They spent then 10th grade actually writing the paper and then submitting it by the end of the year, finding every possible journal. And by junior year, it was published in the Stanford Science Technology Society Journal. And so stories like those are very authentic. A kid finding a topic he genuinely loves because he himself tore his ACL as a soccer player and going deep. I think a lot of this like very quick paid to play programs, it shows through and you really want to have depth. I don't know if Micah, Michael, or Madeline, if any of you did research in high school or if you have friends who did, but we have a ton of students who like to do it at Curious Cardinals. So if you guys have anything to add. That's authentic and it takes time. That's my biggest thing on research. Do the research, but do it authentically. Know that it takes time. And then find a lot of different places to submit it to. There's so many places. That's one of the things the flight plan is best for. It will find niche, unique opportunities based on your specific interests. Find competitions, find awards. And I always say, don't do it to win. Do it because it gives you a deadline, it gives you a rubric, and it gives you a finish line in sight. And that alone is an amazing experience. And of course, if you get some sort of accolade or recognition, that's the cherry on top. Kamini asks, what about kids that are growing up in high pressure environments, like their high school is very directed on STEM and college? how would you help them realize that it is not the college that matters, because I'm having a hard time getting to my son about this? Michael, go for it.
Yeah, so is this just like a student who's so ambitious they don't even want to try to develop like an authentic streak? Is that like if that's the situation I'm understanding, because yeah, it is something I think that it is becoming a greater problem, because as I say, the pressures with social media and just with how early these timelines are getting, I think that students increasingly uh, they know that they want to study econ to get to college in order to become a private equity person and make $1 million and everything. So I just try to frame it as a self-interest question, right? As I've said before, it is just so much better for one's mental health. It is better for one's personal impact. You can make a greater impact, I think, if your efforts are sincere and authentic. To the earlier point about research, I never did independent research, I guess, in high school. I guess there was one paper in high school that I had to do. It was by my senior year. It was the first research paper I ever did. But it seems to me that if you have a person like a Curious Cardinal mentor or any outside influence, sort of there to encourage the student to become a more authentic individual, in time, I think that they will start to see that. I guess my hope is that they will grow out of that mindset, because ultimately, when maturity does hit, you realize that like the world is full of passion projects, and the ones that really stick are the ones that people actually meant to do, and not the ones that they did just to get to another spot.
100%. My newsletter that's going out this week, Kamini, is very much about this. Another mentor told us about what she calls the 3 a.m. test. She was overscheduled as a high schooler, doing a bajillion things, and she loved sleep. And so as she was about to start chugging an energy drink to get after her next extracurricular, she said, "Do I really want to stay up till 3 a.m. every night doing this thing?" And she said, "You know what? I don't. But I would do that for Model UN because I love Model UN that much." And so she said her thing was sleep, but your kid's thing could be pizza or ice cream or TikTok. What's something your kid loves that when asked, hey, if I had this thing, and would it be worth sacrificing for? A lot of our mentors talk about what energizes your kid, what lights them up, and be insatiably curious about what they actually gravitate towards, because as Michael was just saying as well, not only is it a kind of clear advice, but there's a lot of research that shows the most sustained interest, and even Angela Duckworth with Grit is passion plus perseverance. And so if your kid's going to do anything really extraordinary that will amount to anything, it requires genuine passion and love and curiosity. And that's kind of our whole premise at Curious Cardinals. Well, without further ado, thank you all for the thoughtful questions. Jules will follow up with more ways to stay connected. Thank you again so much, Michael, Micah, and Madeline, for going a little overtime with our Curious group today. And we hope you stay connected to Curious Cardinals. And thank you to our amazing mentors for your wisdom and insights. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye.